Welcome to Inside City Council. I'm your host, Al Butler. Today we're speaking with Councilman David Oh. Thank you for joining us, Councilman.
Thank you very much.
The world is much smaller globally as we look at the situation now. People are much closer together than ever before. How can Philadelphia take advantage of this new global village?
I think that Philadelphia is a city with a rich history here in the United States and actually all across the world, because we're the birthplace of liberty. And it's something that people appreciate, although they may not know exactly what we do here in the city. So it's important for us to let people know that in addition to being the place that brought you democracy, we're also a place, a city of ideas and inventions and innovation and art and business. And so I think it's very important for us as a city to, first of all, kind of re-inventory our stock and see in today's economy, global economy, what do we have to offer that is unique to our geographic location, our culture, our assets, our resources, and then go out into the global market and say, hey, Philadelphia is a great place for you to be, to invest in, and to bring your businesses and to bring your citizens for tourism and other things.
Tell us how City Council can address this specifically.
City Council, for the first time in its history, has created a committee on global opportunities and the creative, innovative economy. That was created by our City Council President, Darrell Clark, and I was fortunate to be named the chairman of that committee. And it deals with really three areas that are in the name of the committee: global opportunities, creative, and innovative economy. So the global opportunities really has to do with just expanding our scope and who we do business with, from just being local or regional to being international. And it doesn't matter whether you're an academic institution, a small business, a large corporation. That's something that we can do. And if you're, for example, a museum, are you receiving enough visitors from other parts of the world? In terms of creative, innovative economy, that has to do with person's inventiveness and their perspectives on things, that in this day and age of technology and innovation, that we are engaged as a city in being a hub of those activities.
What is Philadelphia doing right, and what can we do to be better and to attract more companies?
One of the things that we've done correctly is that we're the birthplace of liberty, and that's a great starting point as an entree to people all over the world. We have about 85 colleges and universities in our city, not including the surrounding areas, and so that's another thing that we've done right, if that's something we've intentionally done, but that's something that we have. And so we are a biotech and pharma hub, a healthcare hub, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And so those are some of the assets that we have. We are fortunate to have a river and a port, an international airport, although, you know, at this point in time, we need more international flights, more direct flights going to other parts of the world. But those are some of the things that we've done right. We've also kind of found ourselves between two important cities, and not in a competitive sense, but in a complementary sense. The financial capital of the world, New York, and Washington, D.C., the political capital of the U.S. And so basically, we are well situated in this corridor to offer, in this time of faster travel, access to both markets, even up to Boston or down to other parts of the U.S. But we're in the most populated section of the country. And so those things, among others, are what's good about Philadelphia. We have a rich cultural history, lots of museums, a lot of kind of art and culture here that goes well with innovative, creative, entrepreneurial folk. And so those are things that we've done well. What we have to do for the future is really to inventory what we have and really try to see what is unique about our situation, what's most desirable to those who can come here, invest in our city, create new jobs, better jobs for people, and also bring good opportunities to people in our city. And so I think if we would look at how we can improve, for example, as I said, we're about to expand our airport, but you know, are we reaching the right parts of the world? We are very close to a very large asset in natural gas? What are we doing to really make our city unique and competitive when it comes to that asset? These are the type of things that I think we have to do. We have to look at our tax structure, and then obviously two important things for people right here in our city is our school system. What can we do to be competitive in terms of providing the best education possible to our young folks? And the other is crime. We have to be a safer, more livable city.
It's interesting you say that because a lot of times when people consider these things, they think about infrastructure and how I can get something from A to B and how that works. But oftentimes people don't consider the quality of life issues, the quality of the schools, the quality of my neighborhoods. People don't necessarily consider that when they think about attracting businesses globally.
I'd like to really emphasize that any of these things, foreign companies, foreign investors, foreign employers, foreign visitors, don't have to do with foreigners. They have to do with people who live in Philadelphia and our surrounding area. This is all about Philadelphians. What we're talking about is how do we bring new money, new jobs, new opportunities? How do people sell more things right here in our city? And how do we retain good jobs? And how do we bring new jobs here, new employers? So whenever we're talking about international, while we can also talk about our reach and having all these cultural choices and things, but ultimately the bottom line is we're trying to improve life here for Philadelphians. And in doing that, we do also find, as you mentioned, that it's not just what people think in terms of, well, these companies think about lower taxes and things like that. Many of the companies that we deal with or try to bring to Philadelphia think our taxes are very low because they're coming from other parts of the world where the taxes are very high, or they've been looking at New York where the taxes are far higher than Philadelphia, but they have other concerns. And those concerns coincide with a better life in Philadelphia. They will say, hey, you have low taxes and you're well situated, but your crime is too high. We don't want to set up our company in a city with that much crime. Or they'll say, this is a great place and you have great universities, but we don't see a pipeline of other types of workers. Sure, you're going to have great, workers for us because they graduated from Wharton or from Drexel or Penn or any one of your fine institutions, but we have another segment of the workforce population, and that's where you're failing. So we don't want to come because of your school system. You have to do a better job with your schools. And so from that end, the idea of making our city more attractive for the immediate needs of jobs and good jobs for our citizens also means that we have allies and friends in reforming and improving some of the basic needs of people in the city.
The term workforce profile, tell us about that. What does that mean exactly?
Well, you can imagine if there was someone who wanted to set up a small business and needed to hire about 20 workers, that they have to look out and see who will apply for this job. If you're going to set up in a certain section of the city where you don't think you're going to be able to find 20 good workers, then you may set up in another section of the city where you will find those good workers. So, for example, if we look at Boston, Boston is a smaller city than we are, actually quite a bit smaller. But when you look at the profile of folks who are in Boston, 45% of the Boston population has a college degree or higher. When you look at Philadelphia, it's like 22%. New York is like 32%. So when you look at that number, a company that could be a major employer for us will take that into account. Like, where will I get the number of people that I need, the best applicants to actually work at my company? Another thing that they may look at is how many students graduate from high school, how many drop out, how many end up in jail. Because this is going to tell the company that these are the people that are going to be in the workforce pool that I get to choose from, and if it's not an attractive pool, they're going to go to another place.
Philadelphia has a rich history with unions. Does that help or hurt Philadelphia when it comes to attracting global economies?
Well, in two ways. One is that for many employers, they're worried about unions because they think this is high labor costs and there's going to be difficulties for them in terms of contracts. For other employers, they're very attracted to a city that has the unions that we do, because they say, well, you have a very well-trained and competitive workforce. So in all honesty, it kind of depends on the employers and what they're looking for. So I think that, having a very capable workforce and a workforce that is well paid can be very advantageous and attractive for our city.
Councilman, you've mentioned in the past a 24-hour corridor. Tell us a little bit about this. What exactly would that entail?
It's a kind of a more popular idea because it's a changing of the nature of the economy, in that it's more visible. People see it better these days. But it really has to do with the fact that as our economy changes from a 9-to-5 economy to one which is more based on, people who are able to work at any point of the day. They're not working all day, but they're working at different points of the day at their choosing. So whether they're a writer or a filmmaker, whether they are a scientist or someone who's dealing with new technologies, they're really not showing up to work by 9 and leaving at 5. And so, one thing is that for people like that, whether they be musicians, artists, or scientists, that a section of the city where they can gather and find like-minded people, where they can also carry out the business that they need to do for their personal lives, whether it's be shopping or administrative things, where they can collaborate, and where there will be kind of a situation which is conducive to that type of creativity. So whether people are doing robotics or whether they're doing dance, they find themselves similarly challenged to be more creative, to be more inventive. And so a section that has research centers and arts and incubators and all the things that I think would be attractive because of tourism, that will allow people to enjoy not only the creativity of their profession, but also recreationally, would be a great idea. Now, we do see that in other parts of the world, and certainly we can see that in New York, for example. But, we have seen in other cities a development that is specific to the idea that if you are an advertiser, a musician, and somebody else is a scientist, that we benefit by kind of interfacing with each other, being stimulated by each other's ideas and activities, so that we could be more creative in what we do.
Would that corridor also include shops, gyms, nightlife?
I think it's not unusual for folks like you and I to say that, at certain points in our life or in our profession, me being older than you, that, as an attorney, I might get done my work day at 2 o'clock in the morning. For me to decompress and, get some fresh ideas, and so I might drive up to New York. That's a place where people are out and about, and I can meet some friends and really have discussion and ideas and other things. But I think for our city, we as a city can do that. A lot of townships and other places around us can't do that. They're not a big city. And I'm not saying this is right for every neighborhood in Philadelphia, but as a major international city, yes, there should be a place where people, wherever they live, can come in to shop, to meet, to collaborate. So the idea can be further developed, not just around, federally funded research and all the university and professors and whatnot and the businesses, but also the idea that you and I could meet at a coffee shop with other people, and while we're having a cup of coffee, we could be seated at a table that had some technology that allowed us to exchange our ideas and to put things on the table between us.
In terms of the 24-hour corridor, have you found that people are open to it? Are they resistant to it? What kind of response have you gotten?
I've run into both enthusiastic, acceptance and certainly resistance over the idea of a creative, innovative area that's kind of 24 hours. And it doesn't necessarily mean like 24 hours in the sense of there's a place that's open 24 hours like a 7-Eleven. It means a section of the city where activities can be done on a 24-hour basis. So we would have incubators and research centers and universities and even governmental functions and shopping and other things that are centered around people who are in the creative, innovative fields. When you ask me, how has that idea been received? Well, I think a lot of people, particularly those who are in the technology fields, in the innovation fields, and art fields, they love the idea. They think it's great, especially people who are aware of how things are developing in other parts of the world, the investments that are occurring. For example, Incheon put $42 billion into building an international business district for 77,000 inhabitants, 300,000 workers. So the other part of this is it's not simply keeping the city the way it is because we don't see anything happening around us. It's also knowing that in places where we can't see, except on the internet, that they are also doing things, and if they are doing it at a far greater pace than we are, then we will, and our region will be behind the curve. I think some of the resistance, while they certainly can be legitimate for many reasons, much of the resistance to the idea that I run into comes from people who don't want the city to change. They're used to a certain type of Philadelphia. They want it to remain that way, and many of them really are hoping that manufacturing of the 1950s comes back to Philadelphia. And I'm not sure that it will. I think manufacturing can come back to our city, but not the way it was. And I think a big part of why it would return is plentiful and affordable energy that makes this region attractive and competitive on a global basis. But that will also have to do with what we decide is the future of our city in terms of how we plan and develop it.
Obviously, immigration is a big issue right now. I'm wondering how Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania handling immigration, how that impacts what you're trying to do with a global initiative here in the city of Philadelphia.
Regarding Philadelphia and immigration and immigrants, Philadelphia has been considered a rather friendly city, and for that reason, we have actually seen an increase in our population because of more immigrants moving to Philadelphia. That signifies something very important. It signifies that people who are not born in any particular city or town in America are choosing, either while they're here in the U.S. or overseas, to come to our city because it is attractive to them. And that's, I think, a good thing for our city. It also means that we are having more and more people enter our city boundaries to populate our city, live in our homes, and to become business people and investors in our communities.
What would be the timetable for an implementation of a global initiative? Are we talking 5, 10 years, or this is something that can start to happen immediately?
Well, I think there are things that are immediate. I think it is actually an ongoing process. Immediately getting dollars in, investments into our infrastructure, developing parts of our city, bringing new recreational and educational choices to our city, new employment opportunities, building out our airports, doing all those type of things. Those are rather immediate, in my opinion. But as well, if once again, it's not really that we could have a 5-year plan and end it there, or a 15-year plan. It's that it's an ongoing situation where we have to continually be aware of what is happening in other parts of the world. I met with one of my good friends this morning. He's a very well-paid general counsel of a multinational corporation, a guy who lives in Philadelphia, works in Pennsylvania, and we've been friends for many years. And he told me that he's got a job choice right now that he could relocate to Charlotte, Phoenix, or Singapore. Just like that. I mean, it is not a big deal for him to say relocate to Singapore. And I think more and more in the future, people will say, look, I could go to New York, Philadelphia, LA, or Beijing. It's just one of the cities that they could move to work and live. Whether they stay there or not, I don't know, but more and more that's going to happen, and it's not something that I would have even considered in my day. It was Philadelphia or South Jersey. That was about it. I'm, Philadelphia guy, and I'm going to be here. But as a young person, coming out of college today or graduate school or as a professional, the opportunities to achieve what you wanted to achieve, be on the cutting edge of something, really be involved in something dynamic and worthwhile. You could always be part of Philadelphia, but go to another part of the world as just one of the options that you have, either on a temporary basis or, on a permanent basis, or you may travel back and forth. That happens more and more. And once again, the choice of where you go to live and work and find fulfillment, I think is very competitive.
Councilman, with the new committee you're the chair of, how much direct control can you have? I mean, you have outside influences, you have the mayor, you have the people of the city of Philadelphia. How much control does the city council actually have in putting forth this global initiative?
Well, I think we have a lot of opportunity to have impact, and I think that's exciting news. At the same time, I have to certainly let people know that we're a legislative entity. We make laws. We can propose ways of doing things through the legislative process. We can certainly reach out and be very aggressive that way. But at the end of the day, we are in a system that properly is based on checks and balances. We're a legislative body, there's an executive body, and ultimately a judicial body. So basically, we have to conduct ourselves within that role. But within that role, we have done a lot of things because there's a lot of room for improvement in our city. And so our committee has done everything from receive testimony on how to be more globally competitive in academia and business, all sorts of things, to actually meeting with trade officers and trade officials from other countries, putting different CEOs together to address, for example, manufacturing issues that actually end up creating more jobs for Philadelphians. We will, as a result of these hearings, introduce legislation that may lower tax rates, that may help and ease the burdens of property taxes for people, because ultimately these do affect whether or not we're a globally competitive city. There's a lot of factors that go into establishing a company in our city, whether it's homegrown Philadelphians or people from another part of our country or people internationally, that we have to be competitive. And if it's not our taxes or our school system, it may be the quality of life in the neighborhoods where they live. So we are concerned about all of those things, and we are taking action on them.
Councilman, when it comes to politics in this city, we can be very cynical. And a lot of folks are afraid that when new business comes in, politicians are having these, making these deals behind the scenes, that these backroom deals are taking place, and somehow they're going to get cut out of the whole process. And by the time they find out about it, it's already done, and it's something that's happened to them. For folks who have those fears, what would you say to them?
Well, I think it's always good to be vigilant about government. I think it is important that people keep their eye on government, and certainly government should be aware that people are looking at what we are doing. But I think, having said that, we are elected officials by vote of the people. And so to a certain extent, when the people vote or don't vote, there's a certain entrustment that the people that are elected are going to do the things that we can do in the best interest of the citizens. I think that's important because, you don't want to be too cynical. Too cynical becomes debilitating for the population and for the future of the city and for the people themselves. So the issue about backroom deals, I think to a large extent, when you look at it not as backroom deals, but the fact that, we need to get things done, that we have to make choices about what's best for moving this project forward, I think that's a positive way to look at it. The other thing is that when we talk about the, moving this global agenda forward, yes, it should be inclusive of and transparent as much as possible, but it should be inclusive of all persons. And so kind of as we do this, the thing to keep an eye on is that we're talking about new opportunities and changing the ways things have been done. And in that, if there weren't opportunities for people the way things used to be, because they weren't part of that network, old boys network, or whatever you're going to call it, here's a new network coming in. They don't have any old boys here. And so the opportunity to be engaged, to be looked at afresh, to come to the table with new ideas, new products, new methods, that's open. And I think it is a refreshing process, and especially for people in our city who may not have had, that type of access in the past. So rather than be cynical, be engaged and be positive, and don't step back and say something's going on that I don't want to know about, but to say, hey, something's going on that I do want to know about, I want to get involved, and I want to be at the table at its inception.
Councilman, in our last moments here, is there anything that you haven't touched on that you would like us to know about?
We are competing at this point in time in almost every way with other cities around the world. And it's important that people not look at it as something that has to do with other people. This all has to do with us and our children and our future. It has to do with our quality of life today and tomorrow, and whether or not our children and their children will stay in Philadelphia. Despite all this technology that happens and how quick we can travel and see each other on a computer, people like to live in close proximity with family and friends. And so we certainly don't want our kids and their kids moving halfway around the world or to another part of the United States, because that's where the good jobs and good opportunities are. So let's make our city and our communities and our neighborhoods the great places that they should be.
Thank you, Councilman. And thank you for watching Inside City Council. I'm your host, Al Butler. See you next time.